Factor. The Bradford Factor is a management tool of employee absenteeism, meaning that the Bradford Factor is a way in which some companies manage how often their employees go off sick. So, what they do is that it's based on the theory that shorter and more frequent absences are more detrimental to an organisation than longer, less frequent ones. So, what their theory is that somebody may call in sick. So, somebody just may contact their employer and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry, I feel unwell, I'm unable to come in today." Um, that would count as one episode, as opposed to somebody that would call in and say, "Hey, I've caught pneumonia and I won't be in to work for about 2 weeks." So although somebody may be off for one day, last minute, and someone else may be off for like 2 weeks, last minute, the person off for 2 weeks would only be counted as one episode, whereas the person that's off for one day or 2 days will be counted as one episode as well. So it doesn't look at the length of time you're off sick. It just looks at the frequency and the pattern. And so most companies that use this are based in the UK. I know of United Kingdom companies that use this way of scoring sick leave. It's also used a lot by government organisations as well. Ultimately, what can happen is you have people that are off sick now and then, once or twice in a month, or 3-4 times in 6 months. But that would trigger an alert in regards to how many times they're off sick. Then you could have somebody else that is off completely for 3 months off sick, and that would count as one instance. And so it's good to be mindful of how. Hi Suraj Kamal, how are you? Hope you're having a good evening. Please like my live and subscribe to my channel. Right, so the whole point of the Bradford Factor is to be able to manage employee sickness in a objective manner. Hi Hunter. But by being objective, it can actually backfire on the employees' mental health, well-being, peace of mind. When you do have organisations that use the Bradford Factor to evaluate their employees' performance, it can promote presenteeism, which is when people go to work even though they're sick. And so what you find is some people that are feeling unwell may feel pressured into attending work because they don't want to get into trouble, but then that can lead to them causing sickness to go around the workplace. So if you're not sure if the Bradford Factor is used in your workplace, you can always approach HR, or if you want to find out a bit discreetly, you can just go and check their policies and find out that way. So again, what I will say is the Bradford score is when they assess your sick leave by a mathematical equation, by a mathematical formula. I'm not great at maths, but this is an example of 10 days of absence. Hi Danny, Cool, and hi Tilly. Whose birthday is it? Happy birthday to any birthdays out there. But this is the calculation. This is the Bradford Factor calculation. Right. For example, this is how 10 days absence could be shown. One instance of absence with a duration of 10 days is 1 times 10 equals 10 points. So that's one instance of absence with a duration of 10 days. is 10 points. 2 instances of absence, each of them 5 days, would equal to 40 points. So 2 instances of absence, each 5 days, equals 40 points. So that would be 2 times 2 times 10. Now 5 instances of absence, each of them 2 days, would equal to 250 points. And 10 instances of absence, each of them 1 day, equals 1,000 points. If you look at one single instance of absence with a duration of one working year, would equal to 240. So I know maths is not everybody's cup of tea, but it just shows you by the fact that they calculate it in according to the amount of days and the amount of episodes, it shows how it can escalate quite quickly to quite a high number. So the Bradford Factor, ideally, is supposed to be used in combination with other tools, other management tools. But when it is used in isolation to flag up trigger points, that's when people can be called in for performance reviews and everything else. There is a British union, trade union called Unison, and they are, you know, they want the use of the Bradford Factor to be reassessed because they say that it encourages presenteeism, which is what I was saying. So now when people have flu, instead of staying home and recovering, they come into work and they spread it to everybody else, and then everybody else is off sick because people are afraid of disciplinary action. And also it just creates a very negative environment to work in. Right, so sickness absence. This is information by Unison, and what they say is employer defined problem is that many short absences are more disruptive to the employer's business activities than a single long one. So that means that if you're off sick for hi Eugene, Iwusu. Please like my live. But what I was saying is with the Bradford Factor, what that means is if Eugene is off sick for 10 days and then she comes back to work, her score will be 1 because that's 1 episode. But if I'm off sick for 1 day this week, 1 day next week, and then another day in 2 weeks time, even though it was 1 day at a time, because it was 3 times over that period, my score will be higher than hers. So that's why you have to understand, if you're going to go off sick, they don't count how long you have to be, you're off sick. They count how many episodes. A lot of people, when they go off sick, they feel like they try and come into work so that the work doesn't suffer, but you need to put your health first, ultimately. One moment. Sorry, I'm going off sick. Got a cough there. But now I'll talk to you about the pros and cons of the Bradford Factor. So the advantages and the disadvantages. One of the advantages is allegedly it's objective, but that can lead to other problems because perhaps it shouldn't be objective. Perhaps it should take into account what people are going through. So an example of that is that if somebody has asthma and they're struggling, they're struggling with the asthma in the winter and they're off a lot more, that shouldn't trigger a performance review, but it probably will. Um, Also, as well, it identifies patterns. For an example, if somebody's off sick every single Friday, it will trigger the fact that there's a pattern of the times you're off sick. Or if somebody's off sick every payday, that would trigger as well how often you're off sick, so the pattern will get flagged up. Some people can misuse the Bradford score, because some people might feel like instead of just being off sick for a small period of time, they may be off sick for a lot longer. And the reason why people sometimes do this is because when some people are off sick, they then need time off to attend appointments, or they may need time off to recover properly, or if it's sickness in related to their mental health, there may be other complications where they need time off. And so this, with the Bradford factor, it can just make people think, do you know something? I'm just going to be off for as long as possible so I can get everything done. And once I'm back at work, I'm completely back. Right. So what I would like to say is, number one, find out if your workplace does use the Bradford factor, because it will affect you. And also find out how trigger points are activated in your workplace. So how many times is somebody off sick before they're called into meetings, before they start being monitored, before they start being observed. So it's very important to find out exactly what your workplace, how your workplace actually, addresses those issues. Another thing that I would like to add as well is for people that have chronic health conditions or long-term health conditions, it can be quite discouraging, because if people are having regular visits for chemo or radiotherapy, it's difficult to get the time off, and you should absolutely not be using your annual leave. Okay, so what I would say, and also as well, what I would recommend is that you should speak to your union if you're in doubt about time off. Speak to your occupational health team at work if you're having issues that's impacting your attendance at work, before it gets to any trigger points, before you start being asked to attend meetings or anything. But what I would encourage you to do is to go online and find out more about the Bradford factor, and find out if your workplace is actually using the Bradford factor, because it can be very, very difficult to manage once you start getting called in and what have you. Also, as well, what I would say is that there are some disabilities that some people may feel like, this isn't a disability, but it is important to look up whether or not you are officially recognised as being disabled, whether that be short term or not. And being disabled doesn't mean it doesn't have to mean you're in a wheelchair, or it doesn't have to mean you're blind or anything. It could be severe asthma, it could be epilepsy, it can be depression, any other mental health issues, as I mentioned before, chronic illness. It can be so many things, and it's really unfair if you become penalised for that. And so what I would recommend is that you look up the Bradford factor. The average score that they usually want for each employee is 50. Like, that's the usual acceptable score. 50 or less. Anything more than that usually triggers some meetings. So yeah, find out at your workplace if they use the Bradford Factor. Speak to your union if they do, and just be very mindful of how you move at work. Thank you.